I've got the lights dim nice and low for the scariest or one of the scariest defenses in the NFL right now, the Houston Texans. We're going to be roster breaking down, free agency strategy, and of course, a 7 round mock draft. Let's freaking go. Let's bring it, Houston Texans. I know you're in that playoff hunt right now in that push, and you're really thinking about that, but got to think about the offseason just a little bit, right? And how we can improve this team and what needs to be improved, most importantly, of course. So let's dive into the roster first and foremost, this offensive line. Yes, we need to improve the offensive line, right? Let's get this going. Yeah, here we go. Different team, different Houston or different Texas team, right? I think this offensive line is absolutely going to be a big priority for them this offseason, but I don't think it's necessarily as bad as Houston Texans fans would say. I've watched all the games, all right, so I feel pretty confident in saying you can come at me and sit here, but the big thing about it is they have so many different combinations each and every week. It seems like with the amount of injuries that they've had, Trent Brown and now Ariante Ursary are both injured too. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Hopefully both will be back in time for playoff push. Blake Fisher is going to have to start up at left tackle, Titus at right, and then you're going to have Jared Patterson at left guard for this week versus the Los Angeles Chargers, a good defensive line as well. But I would say draft-wise, what do they need to look at here? Left tackle, not going to make any changes here. Arion Ursary. They could use some more depth behind Blake Fisher. Some depth is definitely going to be a need for this football team in general with the amount of injuries that they've had. Blake Fisher's been a good, solid 6 offensive lineman. He's actually been decent when I've seen him out there too. So I don't know how he's going to look as a starting left tackle for them. But when he had to fill in for Arion Ursary, it didn't like go completely or nothing like that. I thought actually generally speaking, CJ Stroud played a lot better in that second half. That first half, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but his accuracy was all wonky and whatnot. But offensive line wise, I don't think left tackle's need. Left guard, that will be the big need for me. Assuming Titus goes to right tackle. Now, some will say right tackle, you draft a right tackle and then you keep Titus at left guard. Either which way, I would say no matter how you shake it, you're going to need at least one offensive lineman over there, whether it's left guard, right tackle. They'll have to make that decision. I'm sure that Caserio and Ryans, they'll get together and figure out what do they want to do with that whole approach. But I'm just saying, in general, they'll have to get at least one offensive lineman in the draft and maybe somebody in free agency too, depending on the financials. Titus has been their best offensive lineman. I think he's had a great season. I think he got snubbed a little bit from a Pro Bowl nod. Really like Titus Howard. He's one guy that I feel like has just been a reliable force, whether he's played, all around this offensive line, because he's had to for them. And so I think Titus has definitely been their unsung hero for their offensive line. And Jared Patterson's going to have to fill into that left guard position. As I said earlier, this just in this video, of course. And now that Hyde Howard's going to play right tackle again, it's always that switcheroo, which is kind of funny, but kangaroo. You got Jake Andrews at center, who's I feel like he's been good. I know the PFF stats don't list him very highly, but I think he's been pretty good. When you look at when he's been in as the center compared to when he's not been at the center, I think the offensive line has not been nearly as good. So I just want to state that I think Andrews has been really good and he's continued to get better and better. I think he is their starter going into next season. I don't feel like they need to replace him. So maybe some will disagree with me on that too. But Ed Ingram, I still am a little up and down with Ingram. He still gets beat quite a bit by some speed, and there'll be some bad reps on film, but he has been way better than when he was at Minnesota, and you can see that development, that progression. So he's somebody where I'm like, all right, he's a young player, and he is another dude where when he's in at right guard, this offensive line has been way better. So I do want to state that in general, that I think Ingram has made a big development in his career, and I'm okay with them bringing him back as a young player and somebody that they can keep growing along. And it would be like something like a 2-year deal that basically is a 1-year type of guaranteed contract. I'm okay with something like that. And then they could draft somebody too behind him to be able to develop, if nothing else, in worst case scenario, have some good depth and stuff like that. Right tackle, as I said earlier, too, I think Titus Howard ends up moving over to right tackle, and then you find yourself an interior player, whether it's 1 or 2 guards in the draft. So those are my big draft needs, is finding some guard help and then maybe a developmental tackle for some depth purposes. Moving on to the tight end position, and Dalton Schultz, he's been really reliable. He's not an elite tight end or anything like that, but he's a Mr. Reliable, and he's somebody that is under contract for this next season. He's a free agent in 2027, so it's a future type of need, something they'll have to consider in this draft. Stover, actually, not too bad. He got involved a little more in this Raiders game, and he's gotten more and more involved in general in the offense. So hopefully, he can take that reins in 2027 and beyond. You got Brevin Jordan, who's injured. This is an area that I would say you spend a day 3 pick on. especially in this draft class. I think there's a lot of guys in that day 3 category that have a lot of developmental upside that you can go out and find and help out this team. And I would really be looking for at least a blocker that can also help them be a 6 offensive lineman type of dude slash helper in the run game, because I think that would be the most impactful going into this next season. So really, that's the type of mold that I'm going to be looking for in the draft class for them at the tight end position. But Schultz has been very solid, as I said before. I know nothing, right, Schultz? But that's a flash from the past right there. But I am going to just say this is not an early need, but it is something that I will be looking at drafting. Then we go on to the wide receiving room. This is not a draft need. Even if you let go of Christian Kirk, which I don't see them re-signing, with Tank Dell hopefully on the horizon getting healthy, and then him getting, back next season. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson, obviously Nico Collins under contract. This is not a big, even Justin Watson's under contract. You'll get him back healthy. You'll have at least 6 wide receivers. Even if you cut Justin Watson, I don't see this as a big draft need. So their wide receiving room is not the issue here. They're a very good wide receiving room. And Higgins has gotten more involved. And Noel, I expect him to be more involved. Obviously, the returning ability is great, but I expect him to be more involved as a receiver, especially next season. And Higgins already been a good time threat there, especially around the red zone and stuff like that. Then we go on to the running back room. Joe Mixon is injured. He's been out this season. I think he'll be a cap casualty, unfortunately, this offseason. Great running back. Let me no hate on Joe Mixon. Good player. But it comes down to the dollars, right? The money, the financials, the dinero, however you want to show me the money. And when it comes to Joe Mixon, you got to go ahead and look at some of this youth right here. Woody Marks, Jahar Jordan, who's stepped up lately, and he's looked pretty good. So between Jordan and Marks, is there that bell cow, right? Do I think Marks is a bell cow? No, but I love what he's brought to the table already as a pass protector and a receiving back. Like, that's really where he's going to be in his bread and butter. And Jahar Jordan, whether or not he's going to be a bell cow between the tackles or whatever, I don't think so. But at the same time, he's definitely a dude I want to work in. This is something I would look in free agency / later on day 3 in the draft for somebody who can at least be a complementary piece between Jordan and Marks. And obviously, Chubb's worked into that role too as that bruiser, that punisher, and Dare Ogunbowale, special teams captain. And he's a free agent. Between Chubb and Ogunbowale, my guess is they would choose to bring back Ogunbowale for that special teams purposes and that being the captain there. But who knows? We'll see how that all works out. Jordan's a exclusive restricted free agent, so he'll be back. And then we go on to the quarterback position. No need here. Davis Mills is under contract for their backup position, and Mills has been very good. Look at Mills. Look at Mills. That's another flashback of the red. If you're a runner, right? But CJ Stroud is a good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback, and I think that's continuing to show out there. We talk about this. He's had some hiccups, and there'll be times where he's just a little sluggish in games. But one thing I've noticed with CJ Stroud, when it's mattered most, he's typically showed up. So I got to give him credit. And you saw him in that second half, most recently versus the Raiders. He showed up. And time again, that's really what he's done. So I think Stroud is a franchise quarterback that may be in that 7 to 15 category. And he might frustrate you at times that he's not elevating the roster. Or maybe he's holding on to the football a little too long here and there. But generally speaking, I think Stroud is a guy, and he's somebody that they're going to have to make a decision on, right? That 5th-year contract looming and all those sort of things, and whether they give him a big-time extension, that's always going to be a big question for this football team. But I think you give him an extension. Maybe you work it out where you continue to watch him, but if you sign him now, you can get him cheaper if you think about it down the line. So they will have to definitely make a decision on that. But to me, CJ Stroud is the franchise quarterback. Let's go on. But David Mills, great backup. Maybe get a trade for him too. Just keep him as a backup maybe for right now because he's a great backup. On to the defensive line here, and this defense, which is a scary defense. As you can tell, it's glowing in red. There's red. It's red room out here. And you got Danielle Hunter. You got Mr. Anderson. So you got the Hunter. You got Mr. Anderson. What a combination this has been. Danielle Hunter didn't make the Pro Bowl? What? I know there's some good edge rushers in the AFC. You got Mad Max, you got, Watt and all those guys out there, but Hunter is a beast, man. And Will Anderson, of course. So between those two guys, it is the best edge rushing room in the NFL, 1-2 punch wise. Danico Autry, I list him as an edge. He works more as a hybrid 4-tech 5, guy on the interior as a pass rusher for them. Derek Barnett's really been more at their rotational player as a pass rusher. He's played a good game. Another good game versus the Raiders. So In general, what do I say for this edge position? Is it a top priority need? No, but it is a need. And here's my reasoning for this because Danielle Hunter is going to be into a contract year in 2026. So are they going to be able to pay him? And their contracts, man, it's tough. And as I said earlier, you're going to have to pay CJ Stroud. If you do pay him, of course, then you're going to get tighter with guys like Danielle Hunter. You're already going to be paying Will Anderson more and more as his contract escalates. So, yes, you can restructure and do things like that, but you got guys to pay and you got your young secondary to pay. And you're going to have to make those tough decisions. And I'm not doing the 6'7" reference. I'm just talking about weighing options right now. The kids are like, oh, 6'7", he's doing it out here. We'll see when that trend goes, how long that guy is to go long. But I think Danielle Hunter is going to be that tough decision that they're going to have to make. He'll be 32 years old after this next season. So that's another thing you have to consider. So that's why, for me personally, I think edge rusher might be a bit of a sneaky need for this football team. Something with one of those second round picks, or at least that early third round pick from the Giants, that would make a lot of sense for this team to go after and be able to get some edge rush talent for them to be able to develop for their long-term succession plans there. And you do have Dylan Hortons who's still developing and whatnot. I think Barnett could be brought back on the cheap once again on another like 1 year, $4 million type of deal because he's a good situational pass rusher. Their interior defense line is more of like the red alert type of need for me because you got Sheldon Rankins, Tim Settle, unfortunately now is injured, and they've taken a hit with Tim Settle getting that foot injury, I will say. Togiai's been good. I like Tommy Togiai. He's a guy. He's definitely not just more of a, he's somebody that can play for them, and I'm glad he's going to be around going into the next season too. Fadakashi's going to be gone, I think, after this offseason. Edwards could be a cap casualty, especially if his injury takes, I think it was a pectoral or something like that. I could see Edwards being a cap casualty and then they bring him back later on. So don't be surprised if something like that happens because they could save $4.5 million on Mario Edwards and every little bit counts. So that is something to keep an eye out on. Whether Junior Tafonia could step up into that role from Utah. Kurt Heinisch, he'll get back healthy next season. I expect him to maybe be a rotational player too for them. Any which way, I will say defense tackle is a need in the draft. They've done a good job at finding free agents here, and maybe they continue that route. But ultimately, I do think they need to spend some draft capital on this and start thinking about the future because, once again, they're going to have to get a little cheaper, and they've got the draft capital and the means to be able to get some talented guys on the interior of this defensive line. On to the linebacking room. It's also a need. So, while their defense is great right now, I do think they're going to have to replenish some of this talent when you look into 2027 and beyond. And Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond. But this defense got to improve and beyond. And you can't just rest on your laurels because we've seen that. And 1 year you're great, and then next year defense can take fluctuations really big. It's more fluctuative, I feel like, on the defense side of the ball. Azeez Al-Shaair, great linebacker. No doubt about that. He's under contract, but 2027, he's a free agent. And that's kind of the theme about this linebacking position in 2027. Everybody is basically a free agent then. So I would just say that you got to look at that. And I think drafting at least one linebacker is a priority, whether it's a day 3 pick, maybe 2 day 3 picks. I would even make the argument this is one of their day 2 type of priorities because Henry Doe is a liability in pass coverage. He just is. I mean, he's a solid run defender and everything like that, but he just continues to be a pass coverage liability. Yeah, I mean, he allowed that touchdown to the running back this week. You can go back throughout the season, and he's been a bit of a coverage liability. So there's that. But he's a good player, right? He's a hard worker. I don't want to discount that. And he's certainly a rotational player and can play early downs and stuff. But EJ Speed's been a better linebacker, in my opinion. They could bring him back on the cheap. He's another hustler guy, but he's getting a little bit older now, too. He'll be, 30, 31 next season. So you have to look at all those sort of things. I don't think Harris will be back. Same thing with Clark. Hanson, rotational player, special teamer ability there for them. Same with Jamal Hill. I will be looking at drafting some linebacker help. And then we go on to the cornerback room here. This is not a need for me. I think with Jalen Smith, who will work into more of a rotational role as he gets healthy next season. Petree's the best slot corner in the NFL. He can play safety, of course, in a pinch if they need him to. You got Kamari Ramsey, Derek Stingley. I actually have Kamari Ramsey. Kamari Lassner. I think Ramsey would be a great pick for them, but Kamari Lassner, I actually list him higher than Stingley. Like, I'm a huge Stingley guy. Okay, he's one of my favorite players in the NFL, so I don't want to, there's no hate on Stingley here. But I think Lassner maybe has been better this season. I think Stingley is, a stud corner, right? And both of these guys I could rank even higher than this, and I'm being very, very nitpicky with this. I just think their secondary is so good. But Lassiter, I got to give him credit. I think he's been so good. So I want to show some respect there to Lassiter because I really do think maybe he's been their best corner, even though Stingley does have to take a lot of times the ones. So there's that too. And maybe Lassiter's drawing, even though Lassiter draws plenty of ones too. It's not like they just roll with Stingley on one corner. They'll keep both of these guys out here too and whatnot. So all three of these guys deserve a lot of respect. They're amazing corners, and it's so hard to rank who's better in this because it fluctuated the corner position in general. They're all fantastic, and that's one thing that Nick Caserio's been able to do is draft corners. Hey, Stingley was my number one too. If you think I'm hating on Stingley, he was my number one player in that draft class. I got a lot of hate for that too, but anyway, you got Bryant here who can work as a safety in a corner as well. But I expect Smith to be right into the D'Amico Ryans sort of hustler. He's super feisty in the run game too, and he can play in the slot. Going back to his USC days. Let's go on to the cornerback room here. You got Kalen Bullock, who's an absolute star as well. You got Miles Bryant. He's been a little bit of a weakling. Jalen Reed's also been a little weakling for them. Safety is a need for them. So I'll be looking at this draft. There is a lot of guys in the draft here. This draft class seems to be loaded at safety. Maybe, you look at one of those day 2 picks or at latest a day 3 pick / free agency as well. Maybe they say, we've got 2 young guys with Kalen Bullock and Jalen Reed. Let's go get a veteran in here to at least be a day 1 starter. And then we're going to draft someone on day 3, or at least to compete with Jalen Reed as well as he continues to grow and get better. A lot of different options in the safety room. But no matter what, I think they need to add some competition here in a day 1 starter. Now, the coaching staff-wise, we don't need to talk about this too much. I think D'Amico Ryans is a beast. I think he's arguably a coaching candidate of the year, possibly. And then Nick Caley is one of the guys. They'll have to make a decision, and I think we're still evaluating some of those things and how the offseason goes. Of course, you got to get into the offseason first and foremost. I don't try not to do anything crazy, but Nick Caley is going to be very much judged in this little run here and whether or not he continues to be the OC for them going into next season. On to the free agency now here, and this is where we have to make some tough decisions. Joe Mixon, Mario Edwards. I'm going to go ahead and let both of those guys go. That frees up $13 million right there. As I said earlier, our cap space is tight, and we have to make some tough decisions. So those are 2 guys where Edwards, earlier, I think he could be a guy that comes back later on a cheaper contract. Maybe they free him up, see how that injury status is going, and then come season time, they say, all right, we'll bring you back on a team-friendly $2 million type of deal as a situational pass rusher. Then we go on to the contract extension period, where I'm going to give Titus a extension. He's still a young football player, and he is going to be a right tackle for me, and we're going to look at improving this guard position. So, and as I said earlier too, you could put him as the long-term left guard and you draft the right tackle. It depends on who's on the board, and you kind of fit that fluctuability, that positional versatility with Titus Howard is really nice. No matter how you shake this, I want to make sure we re-sign him, give him an extension. That allows us to use that bonus too to get that cap hit down a little bit. That saves $10 million. Don't ask me how I work the math. I'm still trying to figure it out on this calculator. I'm like, man, sometimes math, can blow over the head, right? But that's what I did, and that saved us $10 million. And then we go on to the restructure period. We do have to restructure a little bit. Only going to restructure Nico Collins and his contract. He's going to be a long-term guy, so I'm okay. As long as you're restructuring long-term players, I'm fine with that. Because, look, you need to. If you're going to keep a competitive roster, if you're competing with the Chiefs and obviously teams in even the AFC South there and the Jaguars, et cetera, you have to make sure, Colts, you know what I mean? But it's something that you're going to have to make sure you're staying competitive, but not going crazy like the New Orleans Saints. I say, don't go New Orleans Saints where you have to restructure every single player because then you have no flexibility. This team's fine. They're in perfectly good cap situation, and Nick Caserio, I think, is a great GM as a whole. I mean, some of the draft needs on the offensive line, got to get better hitting those positions, in my opinion. But Nico Collins will go ahead and restructure there and get over $50 million there to be able to re-sign some free agents here first and foremost, offensively. I'm going to bring back Daryl Gumbawali, special teams ability, of course, and as a emergency 3rd, 4th running back, I'm fine with that. And, receiving game, stuff like that. Ed Ingram, I will give him a contract, 2 years, $16 million, $8 million average. This would basically be a $11 million type of 10 to $11 million guaranteed situation. So basically, if it doesn't work out, you're out $10 million. And he could even be cheaper than that. Maybe it's even a $6 million type of average. I don't know yet. Guards, they seem to get more and more each and every season. So I feel like that's a very fair number, and it puts them in a solid tier of solid, kind of developmental starter slash veteran starter type of tier of money right there. Tommy Townsend, good punter. We'll bring him back on a 2-year contract there. Defensively wise, Derek Barnett, good rotational pass rusher. We'll re-sign him up there. And Tim Settle, give him a 2-year deal. Yes, that injury, but he should be full go. I don't see any limitations there on the foot. So you never know. Feet injuries can linger. And if they know more about that, then this could be a tricky situation. Maybe they choose to bring back Sheldon Rankins instead. But I think Rankins is going to get paid maybe a little bit. We saw what happened after a bit of season. Then he goes off to where did he go again? I forget. Did he go to Tennessee? But he was at Houston, and then he left because he got a bigger contract because he had a really good season with Houston. And then he was back after having a bit of a disappointing season. And maybe, who knows? We'll see how it all works out. Look, that's nothing against Rankins. I just think it's kind of pricing out of where I'm at. They could also restructure Stingley's contract a little bit more to bring back Rankins. So that's a possibility, too, for what they want to do. Plenty of options on the table. I just chose to bring back Settle because I think Settle's been really, really good for them. And we're going to look in the draft to get some more interior defensive line help for sure. Kurt Hinish will bring him back on a cheap contract there as some depth as he gets healthy. EJ Speed, I want to bring him back as well because I think he is a nice linebacker for them that can even start and for sure. And if nothing else, give you good special teams combined with drafting somebody. I'm letting go of our secondary: Miles Bryant, Jimmy Ward, MJ Stewart. MJ Stewart's another guy where I could see being a sign later on. It just depends on the injury situation as well with him. So keep an eye on that, especially for his special teams ability too. He's a good backup. I just let him go because of that. And once again, maybe they bring him back before the season or in case of injuries and all those sort of things. Now going on to the restricted free agent period, Jahar Jordan, Jared Kingston, Jamarcus Ingram. Ingram's a good special teamer. Jordan obviously can be a good rotational back there with Woody Marks, and Kingston can be some depth there that'll compete on the practice squad. And I also include practice squad spend too. Now we go on to the outside free agent signing here, where I sign Isaiah Pacheco, Kevin Givens, and Reed Blankenship. Pacheco, just think he'd be a nice little, hard runner there with Woody Marks, can give those guys some rotational, give them some breather, and a Jahar Jordan. And I like the little combination there. I think Pacheco certainly can be that boom and that thunder in there. And then we got Givens here as that situational pass rusher, just a cheaper pass rusher on the interior for them. And then Reed Blankenship here as a safety that can come in and start. He's looking to prove himself after a tough year in Philly. So he gets that 1-year contract ready to try to earn a big contract elsewhere sort of thing, right? So it's a win-win scenario for Reed Blankenship. Draft spend $9 million. I got quite a bit of draft picks, which we'll get into here in a minute. Draft's coming up. We are getting close, but hold on. What should we talk about instead? I'm going to try to make you wait until no, I'm joking. But look at the roster real quick before we get into the draft. Highlighting the needs once again. Offensive line, we're not done. We're going to look at it in the draft. You better believe that. And then besides that, I'll look at a developmental tight end, especially a blocker. And yeah, I think that's really our big priorities there on offense. Defense is actually, we're going to spend more draft picks on the defense because I think defensive tackle is a big need for us. I think edge rusher is a big need for the future. I think safety is something we can look at, and linebacker is definitely a need as well. I think we could use somebody even to compete with EJ Speed and Henry To'oTo'o right away. But here we go. It's draft time and no offensive line. You probably already clicked off the video, right? I'm sure you've clicked off the video by now. But if you haven't, Amari Washington, defensive tackle, defensive stud there at Oregon. I'm a Ducks fan. Yeah, him and Bear Alexander have been beasts this season. And Washington, he is a guy that does the dirty work. I'll just say that he's a big fella in there on that defensive line. And you can make the argument that Washington would be a better pair along with Rankins. If they were to bring back Rankins and have Amari Washington, that would be a fun combination, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would be. Have Togiai start early on and then Washington as the rotational guy. Certainly a lot of possibilities. And you can talk me into multiple things. I just kind of went with that for the price standpoint. Any which way, Amari Washington is a big man who can make plays and be a stud for them going into their long haul defensive tackle, getting some youth up in there on that defensive tackle position. Now we need to continue to invest in the offensive line, right? Austin Sherfield. I just kind of like the value a little bit more at the guard position right in this range than maybe that first round pick, but who knows? We'll see how it continues to get closer to the draft. We'll know a little bit more about where the players could end up falling, but Sherfield's a guy that I think fits the mold. He's strong, he's physical, he's imposing there, and I think he's got incredible grip strength, and you move him inside because he just doesn't have the footwork to play tackle, and that's fine. You put him up next to Ursary, you're going to have some nice run blocking action up there, and definitely got to invest in the offensive line. And earlier, remember, if they do want to keep Titus at left guard, then maybe you look at a Spencer Fanu or a Caleb Lomu, or somebody like that, right? Could be an option for them in that. Maybe those guys are off the board at that point too. So that's kind of what I was factoring in, and I figured, hey, let's go ahead and look at this guard position here to rock it in. Then we go on to second round, Mateo Uiagalelei. We go back to Oregon, 2 Ducks. Woo, man, they did 2 Iowa State guys. Now you do 2 Oregon guys. Let's go, man. We're keeping it rocking here. But with this guy, Mateo Uiagalelei, as I said earlier, I am a Ducks fan. I love Mateo Uiagalelei, huge fan. And I think he has so much upside to his game. Just continue to get a little stronger, hit the weights and stuff like that. But he is definitely got the athleticism, enough juice to win consistently off the edge. I like his juice. I like his hands as well. He's not an elite athlete. Maybe you can compare him a little bit to like a Leatu type of player, but I do like what he brings to the table with his hands. He's got a variety of moves, and he could use those cross chops, those counters, and swipes, and stuff like that. So I just think Mateo's going to be a really good pass rusher, and if nothing else, a great rotational player for this football team. I am looking at it, though, in the mold of a guy that can develop behind Danielle Hunter for a season and may have to take that role. And I feel confident that he could be their long-term starter to go with Mr. Anderson off that edge. Then we go on to Jake Golday, a linebacker from Cincinnati, a Bearcat. Oh, he is a Bearcat of a hunter. He plays a little overhang role in that Cincinnati defense, but he is, don't mistake him for, somebody that is a gadget guy or that can't play linebacker. He absolutely can. And I feel like he can be that opposite pairing with Alex Al-Jaiji here. Al-Jaiji here. I almost said Dre. Who did I say? Dre Greenlaw? I'm thinking of different D'Amico Ryans players, but Azeez Al-Jahir and Jay Goulday, the linebacker from Cincinnati, has enough range to go sideline to sideline. He's not an elite athlete by any standpoint. He might have some coverage limitations, but I think he holds his own, and he shows it with his frame to and his size to be able to get in there and make plays at the catch point. So I do like that, and certainly going to be a nice addition to this linebacking core. Even if he's a developmental guy early on, that's fine, right? You don't have to be a day one starter, bring back EJ Speed, but ultimately he will be one of their linebackers with all their linebackers practically except for Jamal Hill being free agents in 2027. Now we go on to Aaron Graves. I like this guy. I think he's an underrated player in this draft class, and I'm surprised he's not being talked about a little bit more. But the Iowa defensive interior lineman, I mean, he's a guy that can play a little bit up and down your defensive line, but to me, he is more of an interior guy in a 4-man front, an even front, should I say, and can get after the quarterback, at least as a situational pass rusher. I love what he brings to the table with his hands. I mean, he could also be a 3-down lineman guy, too, in a odd man front. And maybe more people would be projecting him as that with his size as well. Because I don't know if his arm length is super and crazy. And that's why I say maybe he's more of a 4-man, or an even man front. I like Graves, though, what he brings to the table as a pass rusher. He's got really solid juice as well. Like, he's got the lateral juice and that quick pop where he's able to kind of quick twitch those guards. And you get him one-on-one, he's very dangerous at that. So he's going to be a rotational pass rusher early on. And, hey, we got 2 guys there with Graves and Washington. I love the skill set that both of those guys bring to this defensive line. Then we go on to Amari Farrell. IU, let's go, Hoosier, right? It wouldn't be a mock draft without a Hoosier in here. But Amari Farrell is a nice safety to be able to develop in here with Jalen Reed. You got 2 young safeties, and we got Reed Blankenship on that 1-year prove-it contract. Farrell has ability to play up in the box, in the slot, a little bit of versatility, which D'Amico Ryans likes. So we try to keep that versatility here with Amari Farrell, and we'll go from there. Where's Will Farrell? I'm getting... We got the jokes up in here. Where's it going at? It's Step Brothers. We need a little action up here with Xavier Chaplin, the tackle from Auburn, transfer from Virginia Tech. He's had a little rocky season. That's why he's falling. He being projected as a first-round guy because he's got first-round traits. He just doesn't have first-round tape. He's got day 3 trait. He's probably got maybe a little bit of, later than that possibly, but the traits are there. He's the ultimate developmental tackle. And as I said earlier, I want to go ahead and find some sort of tackle developmental 6 offensive lineman ability he can just use there to help continue to fortify that room some more. Injuries, right? Injuries have been a big part of it. Then we go on to Jamison Gears. He doesn't have the biggest gears, okay, but he's got gears in the run game. And that's what I'm looking at here is somebody that can be a really good run blocker for them and give them some help in that role. So get some more help inadvertently on your offensive line with a guy that can push and be a good inline blocker for them in Jamison Gears. Again, not the greatest speedster. I think his hands can continue to work on here. There's a reason why he's a later round pick, but ultimately, I think what he can bring to the table as a inline guy can help you out as a blocker. Final pick of the draft, Alex Afari. We're going on a safari for this final pick, the junior over at Kentucky. He is a hunter, man. I mean, coverage may not be his, forte or anything like that, but as a hunter there at Kentucky, yeah, I like him. He's got some good athleticism too. He makes plays around the line of scrimmage. And I think really where he'll serve his best at earlier on as is a special team ace for this football team and ultimately a developmental linebacker and just want to take chances at that linebacker position. So here it is, the draft, mock drafting, free agency, everything we've been able to do after this. Offensive line, we added in 2 offensive linemen. Austin Sherfield, day 1 starter there at left guard. We moved Titus over to right tackle. You got Blake Fisher as a swingman / 6th offensive lineman. Xavier Chaplin is a developmental offensive lineman in some depth. Patterson and Shrugs will be your interior depth players. And then you have at tight end, Jamison Gears as a blocking tight end. You got Isaiah Pacheco and Jahar Jordan working with Woody Marks. That combination, Dare Wally, special teams, of course, and as another running back for them. Wide receiver wouldn't do anything. Hey, look, I don't think they need to. I think Watson, Noel, Hutchinson, that's your depth. You can keep 6 wide receivers. I feel good about that. I mean, if they want to keep a 7th, then you can figure it out, or I guess they could spend a late round pick on it or something like bringing a veteran, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you keep those 6 guys and you roll with it just depending on injuries. We go on to the defense side of the ball. We prioritize the defensive line, that linebacker position for sure. Aaron Graves, Amari Washington. You got Tim Settle back, whether it's Rankins, Washington. That would be a good combination, as I said earlier, but Settle, I like him a lot too. It just comes down to, contracts and all those sort of things. Tommy Togiai could work in as a day 1 starter if they need to with Amari Washington, but Graves, Togiai, Settle, Washington, Givens, that's your rotation of 5. Maybe, Junior Telephone can get in there as well. And then at edge rusher, you got Mateo Uiagalelei, Derek Barnett as your rotational passers with Horton as well, Dylan Horton, and of course your 2 starters, 2 beasts. We didn't do anything corner. I feel good about this. Smith will be able to work in as their rotational player with Tremon Smith as well. So the 2 Smiths, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right? Mr. and Mr. Mrs. Smith. I don't know. What am I getting fooled on here? And then finally, we get some linebacker help and some safety help. Jake Goulday will compete. Hey, he might be able to start right away. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up taking a starting role early on. And then Alex Afari is more of a special team guy and a developmental linebacker. Reed Blankenship in free agency to be a day 1 starter. And then Amari Farrell and Jalen Reed, of course, are your 2 developmental safeties right there in booming. So that is it here for the Houston Texans, rocking it up. What do you think? Agree or disagree? What would you do differently, right? Because, there are different combinations. I could see safety being one of their picks there, and you can make the argument, well, maybe go edge rusher in that 4th round instead, and get a safety to be a day 1 starter instead of going Reed Blankenship or whatever, right? This is a good safety class. So you could talk me into different things like that. Maybe there are going to be people that tell me, hey, you should double dip the offensive line earlier. And I get that too. It depends on what they want to do with Ingram and who they end up signing and all those sort of things. But ultimately, that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm really excited what they do in this playoff push. We'll see if they can make a playoff push. But their defense is going to take them a while. It's, a long way, I feel like. And CJ Stroud, if he plays elite, then they could absolutely be there at the end of the table and run the table and be a serious contender. So maybe we'll be picking later in the 1st round and have to talk about this a little bit later on. But I hope you guys have a really good day and happy Christmas Eve.